So, what are the questions we ask ourselves when we start out on a spiritual journey or into the path into spirituality? I often hear people saying that they found life to be meaningless, or there was a lot of suffering in their lives. And I think that's what often make us take that first step into a search for something deeper, in our search for meaning or love. In my case, I was walking around knowing deep inside me that this could not be true. I was living in a world, I was suffering a lot. And part of me just knew that something was wrong, that it couldn't be true. Life was not designed to be 80 years of suffering and then goodbye. I knew it had to be wrong in some way. And so when we take our first steps into realizing that something is not the way we thought it was, it can happen in a lot of ways. And I wanted to tell you a bit about the way I realized that my mind was pulling tricks on me. And I remember at some point I realized that I did not see things. I realized that I was looking at something, but I didn't see that object or that view. I was telling a story in my head or putting a label to it, like red car. I would actually hear the word in my head more than I would see the object. What I didn't know at the time was that I was realizing how I was not present. I was not there in the present moment. And so I started practicing looking, seeing. What I was really practicing was being present. And it's quite easy to do, because it's just about quieting the voice and using your eyes. And so you got yourself an open-eyed meditation. Look at things instead of label them in your head, in your mind. And so later on I started noticing all the stories that my mind was telling me, not only when I was looking at things, but also in everyday life in general. And so I came to realize that my mind was telling me stories about everything, and it was always, for some reason, a negative story. Eventually, looking at all the negative stories, replacing them with better ones, I realized that it was all stories of the mind. And as long as I was dependent on a story, good or bad, I was not free. I had to free myself of the mind. And so I had to go right back to the beginning with being present, quieting the mind. And for many of you out there, that's obvious. That's something you've known for a long time, and you're practicing every day. For some, it's part of an everyday practice, an everyday meditation to be present or to quiet the mind. But how do we stay there? How do we bring this with us throughout the day? How do we stay present when our boss calls us idiots, or the waitress pour a cup of coffee on our shirt? How do we stay present? And I wish I could say that for me it was just a overnight thing and I woke up and I was present all the time, but that just didn't happen. It's been a process, but it's been a process of going deeper into that empty space that reveals itself underneath the mind. It's been sinking deeper into that stillness, eventually realizing that there's no process, there's no movement, it's all there. And you probably heard that before, but to me it was a quite a late experience that it was actually true. I felt for a very long time that I was moving in some directions, or I was following a path, or I was going from here to there, which is also true in a way. And that's always a paradox. In one level, it's true that we are on a path and we sink deeper, and on a different level, it's all there all the time. So going to that place where it's all there all the time and staying there, for me, was a matter of doing it enough and often enough. And also, 4 years ago, I met my master, a master of consciousness, a master of awareness. And sitting with the master accelerated this process tremendously. And so I realized that's why people have been sitting with masters. We know about that tradition from India. Different spiritual masters have been having their audience and their devotees, and for me it was not until I met my own master I realized the benefits and the gift it was to be able to sit with an awareness like that. How this path that I'd been following, stumbling forward, it turned into a highway, and I was suddenly on in a race car on a highway instead of crawling up a rocky path. And so for me it was extremely important to meet him and to be guided, also because as I sank deeper into this consciousness, the mind started playing tricks on me. And this happens, and it happens to everyone, and that's why I would always recommend that you speak to someone who walked the path, who already knows what the mind will be able to tell you or be able to make you believe along the way. It pulls you away from the path. It pulls you away from realizing that the mind is an illusion. And why wouldn't it? If the mind told you the truth, that it was not real, it would be like it would put the rope around its own neck. Of course it's trying to make you believe in it. Of course it's trying to make your own stories sound like the most important ones in the world. It's not interested in you becoming free of mind. Of course not. And then again, there is a misunderstanding between what is freedom of mind and what is not having an ego. And at least for me, freedom of mind and not having an ego is not the same thing. I still have my thoughts, still have an ego. I'm just not drawn to it. don't believe it. I'm not attracted to the stories that are the ego tries to serve me. Sometimes it shows me a story that in my previous life would have been very interesting to me. It could be a story about my own suffering, or about feeling less or feeling more, or being afraid or being ashamed, feeling guilt. But I'm not attached to those stories anymore, and so I have a lot more freedom. And that's what I call freedom of mind. And so it all began with realizing that the mind was not telling me the truth, that I was not being present. And so I began to look at things, started the practice of being present. And of course, eventually sitting with the master, have been determined for this feeling of freedom that I take with me right now and that I want to share with you.